to share this with you. Welcome home. I'm Jerrel, and this is my Resonator Bass acoustic. So this is a pretty cool find. I found this the other day. Picked it up. It was in pretty rough shape. So pretty typical. The nut action way too high. The truss rod, I was told, was totally bottomed out, and there was a significant bow in the neck. Way too much relief. The saddle was too high, and I could tell there was something wrong very wrong, that the cone was too tight on the inside. It wasn't getting that growl that a resonator should have. So I knew that the setup was all wrong, and this thing, the strings were just floating way up off the neck. It was all kinds of wrong. So I picked this up for around maybe about 180 US dollars. So and it was gnarly. It was pretty rough shape. This was all tarnished. I'll just let you have a look at the instrument now. So I spent, it only took about a night cleaning up the instrument, and it got a bit dusty. It's been sitting around. It, you know, that's all just, there's a bit of fluff there from a cloth that I was using to polish up some parts and clean. A bit of lint got everywhere. I'll just get my brush, and I'll brush it off later, but it's got a great shine to it now. I'm very happy. I can't wait to take this to my clubs. I've only had it about a week. It does have a pickup built in with an EQ just there. This kind of dirty in there. I'll go in with the Q-tip and clean that. It wasn't a high priority. I've got a full-time job, pretty busy, you know. This is just a fun hobby of mine. So, what did you think of the sound? Let me know. Let me know what you thought of it. I picked it up because I really wanted what I thought would be a loud and growly acoustic bass. And when I got it, or when I first saw it and I was going to pick it up, it didn't sound good at all. Very poor projection. The tone was really shallow and thin, and the setup was all wrong. But when you've worked on instruments for a while, you can hear an instrument that hasn't been taken care of and hasn't been set up correctly. You can hear what that instrument wants to sound like. It kind of speaks to you and says, "Hey, man, I'm suffering here. I'm hanging in there, but can you help me out? I really want to sound my best. Maybe you can help me out with that." And that's what I hear whenever I come across an instrument that is in rough shape. So I worked on it. It only took a few hours really, but I got the nut height for the slots to be as low as I could get them. I lowered the saddle as well, removed this all, cleaned up the cone, and I found these plastic, I don't know, they were sleeves, and they were plastic sleeves sitting over the spider legs, which is real weird, because that meant that the spider legs weren't really making contact with the cone, and they were just dampening the sound. The cone was extremely tight as well, so I loosened that up, I cleaned it all up. But whoever worked on this, some other cowboy luthier before me worked on this, and they really did a number. You can see glue around here on these speaker holes, and I'm eventually going to try to very carefully use some alcohol to remove the residue of the glue there. I don't want to touch the finish with the alcohol. That's a problem, so I'll have to tape that up very carefully. They also glued the cone into there, so I won't be able to remove the cone without risk of damaging the instrument, so I don't think I'm going to attempt that. I can hear stuff rattling around in there, which isn't real great. I'm going to replace these strings. I think possibly they might maybe a bit too heavy for this instrument. On my other bass, which is my 8-string acoustic custom bass, I'm going to link that video where I share that bass. I'll link that in the description. You can go ahead and check that out. But I purchased some light gauge brass acoustic bass strings for that, and they work out great for that instrument. So what I think I'm going to do is order another set of those light brass strings and put them on this guy, and I think that will allow for more unrestricted vibration of the string. This still sounds a bit dampened to me. So I haven't been playing bass for very long, maybe about 9 months or so, and admittedly I've been spending the majority of my skill points that I've been saving up. I've been spending that on the fiddle and various mandolin family instruments. I recently just dumped a whole bunch of my skill points on banjo, and usually if I've got a couple skill points left at the end of the month, I might dump some points into the banjo, into the bass. but in the coming months, I'll have to focus on developing my bass skills more. But generally, when I go to clubs and I'm playing with music, other musicians and whatnot, I'm playing other instruments. The bass is more for my home studio and recording, but I have started going and playing with other musicians, and I've played my 8-string acoustic bass at jams. People seem to like the sound, so at some point I will have to focus on improving my bass skills. So I'm very much a novice when it comes to playing bass, but I'm always looking to learn more and expand my knowledge of that. But I have done the research into the setup of instruments and what should be done to help an instrument sound the best it possibly can be. So I'll just play a little bit more and just let you hear the tone of this guy. I've played other acoustic basses before, and I tend to find them quite soft, very hard to hear, poor projection, especially when you get to the bottom 2 strings, very soft. But with this particular bass, after doing setup and adjusting everything, I think it's quite loud and it really projects, so I'm very happy with it. And if you've seen my other bass video, no, I won't be drilling a hole into this one. This one doesn't need a sound port. As a player, I can hear it just fine. It sounds fantastic. No need to drill a hole into this guy. So this brand is Maestro. I did try to look up this instrument. I got this secondhand, but I, from what I was able to gather from research, I believe Maestro generally makes entry-level instruments. I've been trying to find more information on them, but I can't seem to find that much info on them. So I suspect it's just a label they put on entry-level instruments, which means they will need significant setup. And in general, they're not the highest quality instruments, especially from what I see here, that the truss rod is totally bottomed out and there's still a significant relief to the neck. That's not a great sign. I have not really seen that on any instrument, and I've worked with dozens at this point. So that's not great. The saddle is actually quite a soft wood as well, but the saddle is glued to the pickup. So I didn't really want to flex with that. I just wanted to leave that the way it was. So the saddle itself is quite soft. I would prefer to get an ebony cap on there, but at the end of the day, as long as it gets a sound that is what I want, then I'm happy with that. I don't really want to mess with the pickup. Having to cut and re-glue that, especially. I've got a full-time job, so this sort of stuff is not the highest priority for me. You can see I've slipped a bit of a black elastic hairband here, and that's to cut down on the wolf tones. I was getting quite a few on this side, and by slipping that and just sitting that hairband underneath there, that actually prevents the wolf tones from ringing out, especially when you have this going through a pickup. That pickup is going to pick up any vibrations from this side, but it's always going to pick up vibrations from underneath there as well. So it was heavier than I thought it would be, which is, you're going to find that on resonator instruments anyway, is generally the bodies are more solid, as the cone should be the resonating surface here. It takes a 9-volt. It's got a control for your EQ, your bass, your middles, and your treble. I played through a bass, through an amp, and it sounded all right. I thought it sounded pretty clear, pretty nice. I'll experiment with some pedal effects later on as well. But in hand, it feels pretty nice. It's nice in the hand. I didn't have to file down any frets. I didn't have to do anything to the edges here. Nothing's really stabby or anything like that. But I can't really make a final verdict until I get some different strings on here. Who knows how long these strings have been on here? They look and feel like the cheap just the nasty strings you get when you purchase a cheap acoustic bass, the nasty strings that they put on there, even you know, your P bass, these feel like the nasty strings that come on there. So I'm absolutely certain this can sound much better. I'll just have to order some strings from China, those brass ones. I think generally, I think they sound much better on cheaper basses, acoustic basses anyway. So if I were to see this instrument in a shop, say for example new, I don't know what price these would have sold brand new because I wasn't able to find the information. So it would be very difficult. This isn't really a review. I'm just sharing this bass that I think is pretty rad. I just want to share it with you. But if you were to see this in the shop, you know, if they were asking $300 for it, grab it. I'd say grab it, do it. And the reason I say that is that these are quite rare. It's not every day you're going to find a resonator bass, and there's always a risk that when you go for something like that, it's not going to sound what you expect it to sound like. We are basically all familiar with the sound of a resonator guitar, and they have a distinct sound. They're quite growly and swampy, and they've got this brightness yet this depth to them. That's, you know, that's cool. That's a great sound. And it's always a concern that would a bass be able to do that? And that was my question when I went to pick this up. And after having worked on it, I think absolutely it's got that growl that I was looking for. It's much brighter than typical bass. Again, I'll link my video to my 8-string custom acoustic bass. And while that one has a nice deep growl and it's very warm, this one has a brightness and a projection that will work better in environments where other musicians are playing more loudly, or if there are more musicians. So I'm very happy with this thing. I do a significant amount of music composing and recording for my career, for my work. So I will be using this guy in future tracks. I specifically wanted to write tracks that were all resonator instruments. So I'll have a resonator guitar, a resonator lap steel, and now this resonator bass, and that will be, I want to write tracks that exclusively use those. So yeah, this thing's pretty cool. You know, there's still a little bit more cleanup around the headstock to do, just cosmetic stuff. It's really minor, but you know, just have a look at that guy. You know, it's pretty rad. You know, we're all people here. We like rad stuff, and sometimes we see a pretty rad thing and we think, hell yeah, I want that. It's pretty cool. And in my case, it's a fun project to clean up, try and get the best sound that I could out of it. Anyway, I hope you thought that was fun. I hope you had fun watching that video. So I'm not a YouTube channel. Again, I'm not going to ask you to like or subscribe or Patreon or anything like that. I just want to hang out with you guys, and I want to show you cool stuff. So I hope you are all doing well, and please take care of yourselves, and I hope you'll come around again soon. I'll see you.